I'm Shannon Meadows, and this is the video of my process for Studio II. This is my painting God's Eye view for this class. It is 48 by 60 inches oil on canvas, and it's about 60% complete right now. The process I use for this type of a painting is that I use the photo app in the Mac, and I create a composition from the reference photo based on the proportion of the painting. So in this case, 48 by 60 is 4 by 5, and these are 4 by 5, printed at 8 by 10, double 4 by 5. I do it in both black and white or monotone and color so that the color doesn't distract me from the composition. In this particular case, this light beam isn't exactly where I wanted it, and because I didn't want to use Photoshop, I wanted to rework the composition a little bit in a study. So what my next step is, once I've gotten the reference the way I want it, is that I draw a monotone version, and I move the light beam over, and I focus on trying to get these shapes a little more defined than they are in the reference photo. Then I did a watercolor color version just to work on the color palette. From there, what I typically would do is I would do a cadmium red and Gamsol or Turpenoid wash and draw in charcoal a grid and then the initial drawing. I would then use a brush and draw over it with yellow ochre and erase the charcoal and then paint from there. In the case of this particular painting, it was painted over an older painting that was yellow. And in this case, I intentionally left the yellow showing through to create unity and also kind of interest. I probably will reduce some of that yellow and as I continue to work on it. So in this case, I actually used a brush with paint and Gamsol to draw in the grid and draw the initial composition. My next steps with this painting are going to be to use this painter's tape to mark out some of the areas and define more clearly some of these shapes. And then once the lines are clear, I'll use a cloth and the linseed oil to break some of those lines to create interest, like I've done to some degree up here. Some of the tools I use for a painting like this, or in this particular case that I've used, are this little tooth tool, and that creates lines like this or this. I also use this large spatula, 2 different size palette knives, an ink roller, various sizes of sponge brushes, makeup sponges, and a credit card. I also use baby wipes, and I use the baby wipes over my thumbnail on a brush stroke that I might think is not interesting, and I can swipe across it to make a more interesting shape. Also for this project, what I'll be doing, in addition to 3 of smaller paintings, is I'll be working on Yupo paper. And this is an example that I work both flat or vertically, and I'll probably draw in first in ink, and then use high flow acrylics. Ultimately, what I'll be doing is 2 pieces that are 26 by 40 inches, but in portrait orientation with the high flow acrylics and fabric collage. I, in both cases, use pigments that are both organic and inorganic, all the primary pigments. Here I've used quinacridone red and zinc white to create a more transparent look, and similarly in this case I used phthalo green with zinc. It's a zinc titanium white. So that's what I'll be doing on this project. I wanted to talk about the theory of my work. So I'm using, again, what I think, which we talked about before, semiotics, the theory by Ferdinand de Saussure, where my marks or brushstrokes are the signifier, and the emotion of the painting is the signified. And in this case for me, that's the grandeur of the mountains beyond human presence and the spirituality inherent in the mountains that is evoked. It's also evocative of the Charles Sanders Peirce theory of the icon and the index, where the painting shows the process through the mark making. And finally, I wanted to end with a quote by Elmer Bischoff, who's one of my influences. This book by Susan Landauer, Elmer Bischoff, The Ethics of Paint, has the quote in it. And she says, in the 1960s, in the midst of his figurative phase, Bischoff said, quote, "My aim has been to have the paint on the canvas play a double role, one as an alive, sensual thing itself, and the other conveying a response to the subject. Between the two is this tightrope." End quote. Using paint to cultivate the feeling, he wanted a resonance beyond substance. And that is how I respond to the Bay Area figurative painters. I can really see their communication through their handling of oil paint in addition to the subject. And that's what I'm trying to achieve with this as well. I was also listening to our Thursday class, which I was unable to attend, and we were discussing Hans Hofmann and his push-pull doctrine. And he was very influential of the Bay Area, to the Bay Area figurative artists. And I think that's also what Elmer Bischoff is discussing here, the tightrope, the push-pull between the subject and the mark making. Thank you.